Hello to everybody. Good morning to day 107 of Spiritual Healthcare. Welcome, you guys, and I hope you guys had a good Monday. It is raging hot here, although nothing compared to Toronto, so I hope everybody is doing really, really well. Today we're going to be talking about the Gateway Project. From the CIA, as well as mirrors and psychomantiums and all sorts of stuff like that. So this is going to be a really good day. I'm excited. We got lots to talk about, and so this is going to be really, really good. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to day 107. This is crazy. It's day 107. Good morning to Marge and Patricia and Ed. Nice to see you. Nice to see everybody. Nice to see you, Sally. Everybody's there. It's good. I hope you guys had a good Monday. As I say, today is gonna be really crazy and really fun because there's so much information today. So good, so good. So good morning to Kaz. Nice to see you. As I say, we are gonna be going into some crazy stuff today, including recent documents that have been issued in the last number of years from the CIA in regards to manifestation and stuff like that, as well as talking about psychomantiums and mirrors. And the research that has been done into it. Is it an urban legend, or is it more than an urban legend? It's more than an urban legend. I'll give you a hint. It's more than an urban legend. So this is going to be really good. So good morning to Dan and Jay. Nice to see you guys. Nice to see everyone logging in this morning. Yeah, like so much to talk about today. So much interesting information. Last night, myself and two friends, we were talking. We were delving into these extremely interesting documents that were released from the CIA in about 2003. And I can't wait to get into some of these with you guys because it's very, very intriguing, and it's based off of research that was done years prior to that, in about the 1980s, by a amazing institute that is still around called the Monroe Institute. And I keep meaning to just speak to Robert Monroe because we're friends on Facebook, and I should be talking to him more often. But yeah, so there's gonna be lots to chat about today. This is very interesting stuff, and it was stuff that I did. It was a new angle on creation and the paranormal and manifestation in our universe that I have not. I've delved into, but not to the degree that this is done. This has been really, really interesting. So I can't wait to share all this with you guys today. I hope you guys had an amazing Monday. It was very hot here. It's very, very hot. Not nearly as hot as poor Toronto. Toronto was at plus 40 at like 8 a.m. yesterday. It was awful. It was like 100 plus degrees. I don't know. It was terrible. So, but it's really warm here. I hope you guys are I know everybody has been kind of in a heat wave, especially in the southern states like Texas and stuff like that. I know you guys have been really struggling with a lot of heat. But yeah, so I mean, that's okay. We're inside. We're inside. It's all good. So I wanted to start this off. And Kaz is saying apparently they tapped into our weather. Yeah, who's they? There's the question. Who is they? Marge is saying she loves it hot. Yeah. So many people do. You know, it's funny because Galen, my python, his breed is from Africa, and like Central Africa area ish. And you'd think he would love the heat, and he totally doesn't. He totally doesn't. He's so Canadian. He's got these African genetics, and there's no Canada. It's all Canada in him now. He's such a Canadian snake. You can tell he was born here. He's just, anytime it gets too hot, he's forget it. He likes to go out in the evening. He went for a nice walk yesterday evening with me, and we had a lot of fun. But yeah, as soon as it gets hot, he's kind of disappears. So weird. Snakes are weird. They're weird, I'm telling you. All right, so this is really cool. So I'm going to give you guys a bit of a background about psychomantiums, because I thought this would be an interesting conversation to kind of start the next conversation into these CIA documents that are very fascinating. So the idea behind psychomantiums and mirrors, of course, most of us have experienced this throughout urban legends, throughout history. I mean, every kid grew up with the, Bloody Mary legend and, standing in front of the mirror, and you expect to see, if you turn all the lights off, you expect to see a ghost. And, it's got this long history of of, you know, sort of kids pranks and urban myths and all sorts of things like that. But the Psychomantiums got some really deep roots in history, and it started as far back as Greece, in the Greek legends, like the Greek legend of Odysseus, where Odysseus is basically gazing into this pool of blood, and he ends up contacting, I think it was his mother, and the mother comes through and says, you know, my death was good, everything's cool, don't worry, I'm gonna be okay. So the legends like go way back, and then if you go into like Siberia and Madagascar and North America and Africa and all these different places, you'll find these legends of and these experiences that people have had with psychomantiums and whatnot, and it wasn't until like the Christian era came around where psychomantiums were kind of were banned, along with, like, I mean, pretty much every other possible spiritual practice, but it was considered witches' practice at that point. Like the Christians kind of labeled it as this negative thing, and, you know, unless you approach spirituality in one specific way, then everything else was irrelevant. So they kind of eliminated all these options for people in a lot of ways. And so when we even when we look into literature, like Shakespeare's Macbeth, for instance, you know, the witches, you know, they're conjuring in their cauldron and bringing up images. Queen Elizabeth I consulted a polymath scholar who set up a mirror gazing room. So it's really interesting. Like, there's tons of history behind the idea of mirror gazing and psychomantiums. So probably the most relevant information about them today, though, actually started, and this is where the conversation gets really interesting, came from a fellow by the name of Dr. Raymond Moody, who is a huge name in parapsychology. If some of you guys will probably recognize the name. But in about 1990, Raymond Moody decided that he was going to, like, seriously investigate it. Like, how do psychomantiums, how does mirror gazing, all of this stuff, how does this actually work? You know, and does it work? So one of the things that he ended up doing was he created, he wanted to create like a modern day version of the Psychomantium mirror. And he ended up taking this special room, and he had a large mirror on the wall, and he had a chair that was angled so that the person looking could not see their reflection, but they could see the mirror. And he had one light source, and the light source was kind of behind the chair, so it wasn't a really bright light source. And the person that he used ended up like staring into the mirror for about an hour, and like nothing happened. And he was hoping to encounter a grandmother, but what was interesting was that about a little bit later, like an hour after they had done this, he ended up having another encounter with a grandfather instead, who came forward and was it was another grandmother. Sorry, it was another grandmother. And she came through, and her voice was clear as a bell, clear as day. They had a great interaction. It was a great encounter. Everything was really cool. So this really spurred him on to keep this going, because he was like, okay, well, there's something to this. This is interesting. So in 1990, a little bit later down the road, he ended up building this space called the Theater of the Mind. And what he wanted to do was have this, by 1993, he wanted to create this space where altered states and things like that could actually become more of an exploration, and people could start to dig into this. So he ended up having some pretty cool findings by the time that he was done. About a quarter of his subjects encountered some deceased person other than the one that they'd planned to contact. So this was really interesting. So they would sit down with the intention of bringing in this one person, and then it would turn out that the entity that would show up was someone totally different, but they would have this really great encounter. In about 10% of the cases, the apparition seemed to be actually moving out of the mirror. So there's some nightmare fuel for y'all. Y'all not going to sleep now. But they would actually experience like what they thought was this sort of this moving of the entity that was actually coming through the glass. A few subjects felt that they ended up entering into the mirror. So they actually felt that there was this reversal of their own position in the chair. And about half the subjects actually held a conversation, whether it be telepathically or verbally with the entity. So that was really interesting. Almost all of them said that they experienced the reunions as real events. They were not fantasies or dreams. Like, all of them had said, no, this was an encounter. This was not an imaginative thing. This actually happened. And a quarter of the cases, the apparition was encountered not during the Psychomanteum session. So here's the thing. So it was usually within about 24 hours after it happens, after they sat down, after they set the intention. Nothing happened during the mirror session. It was about 24 hours later. So this is pretty cool. Like, this is pretty interesting. And just like near-death experiences, the subjects were usually really affected by what happened. Like, changed their life. Like, these were paradigm-shifting experiences for these people. It was really cool. So needless to say, like, this is pretty cool. And so the idea that this is not simply, urban legend, I think is pretty relevant. And to bring it to the forefront. And this is something I think people can play around with as long as they're in good vibrational state, right? Raymond Moody noted that a lot of the historical mirror gazing and things like that has been discouraged because people have had a fear of the unconscious. There is a suspicion on the part of religious authorities about people having personal spiritual experiences, which has been a big thing, because if a lot of the religions that tend to be a little bit more on the controlling side, if they think that somebody is having a religious experience apart from, or a spiritual experience apart from the doctrine, that starts to threaten a lot of egos. There's, of course, a lot of charlatanism that can happen. People fake it. The perception that altered states tend to be ambiguous on a number of levels. And, as I say, there's a discordance with the officially sanctioned view of reality, right? So there's a lot of challenges that come into all of this. So that being said, kind of bridges us into our next topic, which I found extremely fascinating. So last night I spent a good few hours reading through this really interesting document that was released from the CIA in 2003, or allegedly released from the CIA in 2003, of their studies into something called the Gateway Project. So for those of you who have not heard about the Gateway Project, it is basically, it was the idea that the military has been very interested, first of all, in paranormal research for a very long time, like way back. Of course, they were using wind talkers and all sorts of things like that way back into the First World War. Like Hitler had an entire department dedicated to studying the paranormal, and he had channelers, people that would literally, that was their job. They just channeled, and they channeled information to build equipment and buildings and all sorts of stuff like that. Like, that's all they did. If you guys want to check that out, check out Hitler and the Occult, and you'll find out all sorts of stuff. He was very much into UFOs as well, and trying to figure that out. But they did a lot of channeling and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. So the military has always been very interested, and I had the pleasure of being in the lectures of a fellow by the name of Dr. Ed May and his associates, who started the Stargate Project, which was the initial adventures into remote viewing during the Cold War and things like that. So it was a very interesting guy, lots of history. So the Gateway Project is sort of that taken to the next level, because it is about the idea, of course, that we can manifest and create our reality. And when the Monroe Institute in the 80s, headed by Bob Monroe, really started to get into the idea of altered states and law of attraction and understanding that we can shift our realities and shift our, shift what we are creating in the world. The military grabbed onto that because they're like, okay, like this is interesting. It kind of lines up with the Stargate Project. What's going on? And they did a really deep dive. So these documents are basically this deep dive into their own experiments with manifestation and understanding how it works. And what's fascinating about this is that they figured it out to the letter of the law science as to the state of our brain, where, how to measure it, that our manifestations and our energy and our focus can be measured in watts. How do we do it? How do we create this? And they started with a series of meditations, very similar to things like we'd see in a Ganzfeld experiment, or something like that, where you kind of, strap on your headphones, let your mind go, and see where these different things take you. And one of the things that they are very, very big on within these documents, and I'll post these for you guys so you can read them, is the idea of that syncing both hemispheres of the brain so that everything is cohesive, so that our focus is cohesive, our heartbeat, our circulatory system, our body, everything that we're using to envision and create this the new reality that we want, is all in sync. And the analogy that they used, and I thought this was really, really brilliant, was the idea of a hologram. So for those of you guys who don't know how a hologram is put together, it has to do basically with the idea of you've got energy which is in stillness and in rest, and then you've got energy which is in motion, and the energy that's in motion gets basically pummeled into the energy that's at rest. And when you're able to freeze that, you kind of get a snapshot of the depth of, or the image that you're looking for, you're looking to create. So they go into this in great detail. And the analogy that I loved was the idea of a still pond with some pebbles, and the idea that you can throw these pebbles into the pond, because so your pebbles are your energy in motion, where your water is the energy at rest, and the pebbles end up creating these ripples. And when you freeze those ripples, you're able to see the image. When you cast a laser into that frozen pond, you're able to see the image underneath. So it's very interesting, and it sounds very complicated, but it's really not, once you kind of get into it. And the idea that our energy, and the more cohesive we are in our focus, in our physicality, in our body, how much we are living, how we want things to be rather than what it is, all plays a role into what it is that we manifest. So the more that we not only believe it, but the more that we physically feel it and have those and have everything running in a cohesive way, impacts the ability to manifest. And it was funny because I had not considered before just how much the physical body and the physical cohesion actually played a massive role, and now they've scientifically proven that it does. The other bit of information that I found that was very interesting about this was that they talk about negative entities as well. And I've always kind of had this theory that negative entities are basically thought forms that are hanging out in the lower frequencies. And when your emotional state is, down in the dumps, you have access to these thought forms and these negative entities. And they bring that up as well. And they found the same thing, which is pretty cool. So the documents are very, very intriguing. They get a little bit, there's 30 pages, so I'm warning you now. Be prepared. Get yourselves a damn cup of coffee and be prepared to go through this. It's a lot of, it gets a little bit on the technical side, but there's quite a bit in terms of meditation, and there's meditations that I'm going to post for you guys on the EntitySeeker Facebook page that you can check out from the Monroe Institute. And they are they're brilliant. I tried one last night. It was very interesting. I had a very unique experience, actually. I zoned out, had the headphones on. The only thing in the light in the room was through the window and a candle. So that was my setup. It wasn't very technical. It wasn't very technical. But anyway, so I kind of laid there and chilled out, and it was, it got very interesting. I found my eyelids twitching. I found, I was definitely pulled. Definitely, I would say I use the expression pulled, but it wasn't a physical sensation. And what was fascinating to me was that I was hearing, about 20 minutes in, I was starting to hear humming. And the humming turned into both a male voice and a female voice that were definitely in the room. And whether I was in their room or they were in my room, I'm not sure. But I got the impression that I was in their room, interestingly enough. But it was really intriguing, and you definitely felt the presence of somebody there. So when I read the comments on YouTube about it, there were many people that had many different experiences, and they all varied. But it was very interesting, and I felt that same presence many a time in many haunted homes. Encounters with spirits that I've had, it's a very definitive presence. If anybody's ever had that experience, somebody's in the room. There is no, you're not guessing whether it's your imagination, And it was very interesting. So I'm going to post this stuff for you guys anyway, and you guys can piece through it and hash it out. But I wanted to share it with you and just put it on the table because it's really interesting. Kaz is saying, so it's a rabbit hole. Yeah. Yeah, basically, it's a rabbit hole, but it's a very definitive rabbit hole. I think this is what I loved about it, is that it didn't leave a lot of questions unanswered. And when you read these papers, I think you're going to find this as well, is that they answer a lot more than they ask. And so if you take the fundamentals of what we've talked about before in spiritual healthcare and you start applying it to this paper, you'll get it. You'll get it right away. It's pretty cool. And Victoria is asking, it feels like there's a lot of people feeling an energy shift this week. Are you seeing it too? Yeah, I think, it's funny that you bring that up because after this meditation, I fell asleep and whatever, and then I kind of woke up and couldn't get back to sleep. And when I posted that on Facebook, everybody kind of chimed in and was like, yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I think people are doing a lot of personal work over the last little while. It's interesting, and I mean, there's so much chaos that's going on right now in different areas. But I think people have hit the phase of COVID, at least in Canada, they have, where I think people have started to make it not so much a new normal, but people are acclimatizing to various changes and things like that. And I think I think people are starting to settle out. The panic is starting to ebb in Canada, at least. And people are starting to realize that it's okay, we can actually move through this and function and go to work and, and whatever. So I think people are really, they're hitting a new point with their personal work. It's almost like the grief process when you finally hit acceptance. But there's a relaxation in that, I think. There's a relaxation. And as I say, I'm finding the work that I've always found the work that the Monroe Institute has done is fascinating. But where the military seems to be taking it, very interesting. What they're doing with it, and I highly recommend to explore it a little bit. The CDs and stuff like that are quite expensive, but some of the meditations and stuff you can get actually for free on YouTube, and it's pretty cool. The only thing that I would recommend with anything like this is to make sure that you're going into it with I think a set intention, and make sure that your emotional state is in a good place. I think that would be my advice is don't go into something like this in if you're upset or you're hurting or you're depressed or anything like that. I would say avoid this kind of thing. But I think if you're finding yourself curious or excited about it, or you're coming at it from a happy place and an interesting place, do it from that perspective and not a place of fear or, oh my God, I don't know I don't know what's going to happen to me. Don't do that. But no, I do. I think there is a very interesting. I think there's an interesting shift going on right now with a lot of people, and people are I've noticed I'm coming across new information recently, which is interesting, new info. Sally's saying I had trouble falling asleep this week, so maybe the shift is affecting me too. Yeah, I think this is definitely the time that we kind of double down on the our inner work and be able to take the time to do the meditations, take the time to be able to do this, because I mean there's no time like the present anyway. But people are reporting a lot of that. It's pretty cool. So I wanted to read you guys a little piece from Faith in the Valley today, because there's a great segment in here that I think is so applicable to this. And it's a letter to yourself is basically what it is. A letter to yourself. So check this out. Dear self, don't forget to love yourself today. Don't forget to touch your face, hold your hand, and by all means, give yourself a big hug if you need it. Don't forget to be understanding, kind, and gentle when you speak to you. And if you need a shake or a little smack, do it with love. Don't forget to compliment yourself, to celebrate your victories, to honor what you're feeling, and to tell yourself the truth about everyone and everything. If you make a commitment to yourself, keep it. If you can't keep the commitment, renegotiate it with yourself. And no matter how many things you have to do for other people, take a few moments to do something nice for you. If you have a good day, reward yourself. If you have a not so good day, support yourself. And if you forget to do all those other things, at the very least, make a point of telling yourself, I love you. Love. You must give it to yourself. I love that. I love that. I love that. So go into this. If you're going to try to explore this today or over the next number of weeks or whatever, do that. Come at it from that perspective, because that's what this is all about, you guys. And as I say, and have fun with it, because that's what it's meant to be. All of this stuff, all the paranormal and whatever, we're meant to have fun with this stuff. It's, we're meant to explore. We're meant to, create and understand and do all of these things. And people forget that it's supposed to be fun. And they forget that life is supposed to be fun too. If you're not having fun, then you're doing something wrong. It's supposed to be fun. I noticed a friend the other day had posted on Facebook that they had been playing Pokemon Go with their niece. And some of you guys will probably play that. It's awesome. I love Pokemon Go. I'm on there too. It's so much fun and whatever. But they were playing it with their niece, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you play." And they were like, "Oh, I don't have time for that. That's I have to do grown-up things." And I'm like, "Well, there's a time and a place for grown-up things, but you have to play. You have to figure that out." And if you lose that, you become very emotionally flat, very emotionally flat. And it's funny because it didn't surprise me that that was his reply, because he's very much like that. He's very kind of, he doesn't play well. It's funny. But yeah, it was interesting. So yeah, Pokemon Go is the best. It's awesome. Anyway, everybody, got to do our affirmations. So everybody take a breath. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I am able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. Everybody take a breath. Thank you, guys. I hope you guys have a great Tuesday. I will post all of this crazy stuff, manifestation stuff, on at the EntitySeeker Facebook page for you guys, so you can check it out. I'm really interested to see, for those of you guys who do go through and read it, what your thoughts are, what your take is on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the upcoming classes, because it's very interesting. And if you guys have questions about it, send them in. Send them in. Kaz is saying nice necklace. So yeah, Patricia, who's actually on here right now, she actually made this. It's super cool. Hold on. It's super, super cool. It's like my little fire snake. It's so neat. It's all chainmail. Check out the back. It's all chainmail. It's really cool. Super, super. Yeah, this was my birthday present last year. It's so awesome. And yeah, she's brilliant at chainmail, so she's the one that did that. Patricia Latham's on Facebook here. So anyway, guys, I will see you guys tomorrow. Spiritual healthcare. Bye, guys.